United Performing Arts Fund here in Milwaukee. I am inspired by the arts because I'm inspired by what the arts enable and inspire us to do. Seeing the arts, seeing a performing art is really all about helping you to think differently, create new things, be a new and better version of yourself. I know I am always inspired when I am a part of a performance or when I'm attending a performance, and I want to multiply that inspiration out well beyond just that one performance that I've seen. So I want to share that idea of being inspired by the performing arts with you and encourage you to support the performing arts as well. Very easy way to do that. You can go to upaf.org/donate and give your financial support to the performing arts, because the performing arts want to give their support back to you and inspire you to do new and bigger and better things. There you go. United Performing Arts Fund here in Milwaukee. I'm really excited. We had our kickoff event yesterday. It was supposed to be live and in person at the new Bradley Symphony Center. We were super excited about it. Milwaukee goes and declares a winter weather emergency at 2:00 in the afternoon. So we went virtual. Talk about an impressive performance. It was the arts equivalent of a pivot. We call it a pirouette. Took the entire live thing, went virtual. Yeah, I know. Did this. I was really impressed. Really impressed with the team over at UPAF. They converted the entire thing to virtual in a matter of a couple hours. Delivered a great experience. And as it turned out, it went out live on Facebook. So now people can go and watch it who may not have had a chance to see it otherwise. So if you want to see the community campaign kickoff event, you can also go to the Facebook page for upaf.org and check it out. There's some pretty cool performances. And I said some things that may or may not have been coherent. So if you want to go look at that, you can check that out as well. Speaking of ideas that may or may not be coherent, today's topic.
I want to make sure that people know where it is. So I want to make sure that
they
get.
We can do that. We can drop that.
Yeah.
Nicole got us. Nicole put it in the show notes. And if not, again, search for upaf.org or United Performing Arts Fund Milwaukee. You find it on Facebook, and it'll be, you can find it on Facebook. It was the event from last night, which will be February 2/2/22. No, 2/2/2. Yeah. All the twos. Tuesday. All the twos.
For those of you who want to go watch it, it's facebook.com/upaf1. So UPAF1. Facebook.com/UPAF1.
Brad, right. doing the
right
hard
there,
research
right at the
for
top.
Appreciate you.
Right Thank up you. There at the top.
There you go. It was good. It was really good. All right. Today is episode 82. Brad and Michael are going to explore all the sketchy ideas related to improved idea management. Brad, how did we get here?
All right. Well, actually, the original statement, which I really liked, for those of you who are into this word hygiene, is based on that premise. So if you're a small business owner, if you're like me, if you're somebody who always has ideas hitting you in the middle of the night, where you're like me and you have a notebook next to your bed in order to make sure you write stuff down. By the way, don't put it in your phone because that'll wake you up. Write it in your notebook because that will let you fall back asleep. But this whole concept of idea management is really, really difficult, especially when you always have things flying at you. Or if you're running multiple businesses and you're trying to prioritize things, which is how this came to be, because we're working through all of these things that Michael and I are doing together. And I think we both identified that, hey, we probably need to make sure we've got a system in place for prioritization and management of ideas, because I always just dive in and try to get it done.
So there are some classic, we'll call them classic approaches, traditional and typical ways that people manage. And this can be, we're using ideas as a catch-all term, right? It can be also be for tasks. It can be for requests. It can be for obligations, new ideas, anything in that neighborhood that you don't want to lose track of. So option number one is just do it now.
Just do it. Just do it.
Do it. Do it. Yesterday you said tomorrow. Today is the day. Just do it. So if option number one is just to do it when it comes to you, that's a good way to make sure you don't forget anything, because you'll just do it right away. Mm-hmm. it might have some cons, might have some
There are.
potential problems with just doing everything right
There are
now.
plenty of those. Yeah.
There are plenty of those. Well, what's one of them, Brad, from your experience?
Hence the squirrel moment in the intro.
Yes.
You end up jumping around a lot, and things may not get done. Yeah. Now, I want, while you're writing this down, I want to make sure that everybody understands why this can be an issue when you're running businesses. You end up getting a bunch of ideas, and then you don't know how to actually prioritize and get them done in a way that is realistic and feasible. I would not recommend taking the approach that I used to take, which is you work and work and work and work and work, and then you don't sleep. And then people are like, why do you look so tired? Why don't you go and have fun? Why don't you live a little? It becomes a problem.
Especially when other people, yeah, hey, good to see you. You look tired. Like that's the worst opening. You know, it's like it's always come from a place of concern, but it ends up feeling really like a put down. That's all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I'm just doing it now, that might feel good. It might feel really productive. I get that, right? Look at all the things I'm doing. I'm just knocking stuff out. What's the downside of that, though? What's the downside of doing everything right now, as soon as it comes to me?
So if we're following the SPEAR model, we're not actually getting the prioritized things done.
Got it.
And that's really what it comes down to. So, I think for sake of discussion today, we should keep it as ideas rather than tasks, because I think there's a big difference, because there are certain tasks where you just get it done, or you can delegate that stuff, or you can find ways to manage it. But I think when you're talking about ideas, they tend to be epics if you're looking at it from Agile, right? So
yep. Okay, that's good. So it puts my priorities at risk, and it might mean I'm actually getting distracted, because in the middle of doing this, if a new idea comes in,
another idea,
my default is do that. I leave a lot of things undone, I'm guessing. A lot of starting, not a lot of finishing.
Yeah.
Okay. Lots of starts left undone. All right. But it always feels really good at the time. All right, so let's do it now. That's option one. Option two would be, I guess, do it all later. What else could I do? As new ideas come in, I do it as soon as it comes in. I archive everything would be another option. Would be like the complete opposite end of things, right?
Right. Yep. Or and don't even write it down. Like some people rely on ignore it and hope that it comes back later. Like there are people who do that, and then they struggle to. They're getting the prioritized things done, right? That's the positive. They're staying focused. Yep. But on the negative side, what ends up happening is there tends to be a lot of not being able to recall what that idea was, and turning into missed opportunities potentially.
Absolutely.
As well as, just like I'm forgetting right now, the other negative behind when you do that, the other negative is that from an emotional or a feeling standpoint, I don't know about you, but when I can't remember those things, it causes a lot of stress and anxiety or frustration. So you end up getting frustrated because you're like, crap, what was it? I don't remember.
Totally. Right. And there's a sense of, and so we're prioritizing that focus. But we're basically saying is anything that might come in while I'm focused must be less important than my focus, which may or may not be true.
Correct. Yep.
And then in that later moment where I go, wait a minute, was that important or was it not? That's where my anxiety and frustration comes in, because I know there was something. And that I know there was something, but I can't quite grab it anymore. Yeah, that I've absolutely had that feeling myself. Okay, so do it now. Opposite end is ignore it. I had a third, not as successful technique, but now I literally can't because I didn't write it down. How classic is this, right?
I-
I'm
I
literally
mean,
object
here's-
lesson right now.
Here's the third option is at least write down a headline for it.
Okay, good.
And this is where there's more to it that I mean, and you and I are trying to. Part of this, friends, in this episode is we're trying to classify it so people have a process. If you haven't noticed, if you've been watching Michael and I for a while, we love process. Process helps to build floors so that you don't have a basement and you can't fall through the floor. Process helps to hold up structure. Process helps to hold up a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. The challenge with capturing it, though, is most people are typically not prepared to capture it.
Right.
And if you're not capturing things and the right details of those things. So I essentially boil it down to those three. The third one, which falls kind of under capture it, is you tell somebody else right away, right? You delegate it. But that's a form of capturing that if you don't have systems in place, people aren't going to understand what that means either. So
yeah, actually, I like
there's
that
a lot of ways
idea.
to capture.
Let's do that. Let's do share it, almost like give it away.
Yeah.
Before and almost immediately, like before I've actually done.
Yeah.
So because I think option 4 is going to be our best of all worlds version, which is going to be having a capture system.
Yep.
Or process. So because giving it away right away without the fuller system is also failing. So benefit of sharing it right away is someone has it.
Yes.
Downsides of sharing it right away is if all you're doing is sharing it, you've got no tracking or ability to follow up.
Yes. So that's why I put up, here's your 1, here's your 2, here's your 3, and that falls towards the now, and here's your 4, and that falls towards the later.
I like that.
And the reason is because if you're sharing it, your hope is typically that person's going to be able to get it done sooner than you are, right? So,
right. Yeah, it's like the delegate.
Okay.
Yep.
But what ends up happening here when you share it is details are missed. Vision typically doesn't happen because you haven't been able to formulate it. You haven't been able to clarify it. The biggest thing in this middle part that I've learned is to clarify the why right away. So that's why I said headline, write a headline down when you capture it. The next thing is your subheadline should be the why. And then after that, any details of the how, the who, what, and how, and potentially the where.
So
but most of the time when an idea hits
headline,
you,
includes the why. Eventually gets to the who
at
and
least
the when.
those 2 things. Yep.
Who, when, how. And then eventually, and then you can get into the what details. So you're kind of going from like levels of abstraction. Like the headline is literally just, giving it a title. But you're saying identifying a why before I get into the other things probably helps me to prioritize those headlines.
Oh yeah. The biggest thing that and that's just the way that like I've learned to do it, and I know you and I have discussed this is part of the challenge, even when you're capturing. So I don't know about you, but I end up getting stuck in this idea loop where I just continue capturing along the way. And I'm hoping we'll get to this and you'll help me figure out how to prioritize it. But at least if you're capturing things, you're at least getting it out on paper and it's at least getting formulated further in your brain. So the thing about capturing, and there's a reason why I write if I can, because it will actually, it's the whole writing thing where I mean, when I'm on the fly, I'll do voice notes and then transcribe it if that's the only way I can. But I carry a notebook with me everywhere I go. Even if it's not the same notebook that I need, because if I write it, I know the whole, when you process it through your brain and you have to formulate it, then put it through muscle memory and write it down, it actually causes your brain to process it more. So that's why I do the writing, because then I will be able to recall it. And if I can't recall it, I know where that notebook is. I can go back and pull it out and put it into organization. So the note taking via voice tends to be how I share it right away and delegate it. And if I can't, because then the tones come out. But if I know it needs to sit and capture it, then I write it, and I end up, it still can be distracting for friends. Like, it still can be distracting. And I think that part of this is understanding how each of these play a role.
Absolutely.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. Back to that, each of them has a value. So, like a lot of the things that we've talked about before, I mean, the idea that's coming to mind is conflict management styles. There's 3 main default styles, right? Fight, flight, and freeze. Each of them has a strength and is a good approach in certain situations, but applied in the wrong situation, right, it becomes a risk. So doing the benefit of each, right? The benefit of doing it now is it feels good and productive, and it is productive. It's doing it right away, gets it done. Literally takes that idea, turns it into action. There's a benefit to that. Ignoring it is good when you need to maintain your focus. Sharing it is good when you need someone else to have it, has it, and can act on it. Because there are risks to each of those, though, we need something that's more holistic and then further identifies, maybe if we start here, maybe pushing to those other ideas. So it's the capturing it that is the system where ideas are not lost, and then they can be evaluated. Evaluated and further prioritized and planned.
Yeah. Do you think, once you finish that, I'm going to ask you a question, but I guess, and as we're dissecting this, I think that some people need to understand one of these and do more of them than others based on how they get work done.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I say that, like, if you're a procrastinator, do it now. Right?
Right.
Like, you should, when they come up, even though capturing it seems like the right thing to do, even if you're like, I'm going to capture it right now. If you procrastinate and like, because part of this is the self-evaluation along the way, right?
Yes.
And I know most of the people who listen to us are small business owners. They're the only person in the business, or they're a leader of a small team.
Right.
If you are one of those people and you procrastinate, you know what? If it seems like a large enough idea that's going to make an impact, I would recommend do it now, or do it as soon as you can. If you are somebody who is squirrel and does that and struggles to get the other stuff done, the important stuff, capture it and do it later.
Sure.
And I think it also depends, right? Like, if you are dealing with high anxiety for whatever reasons at that point in time, because of wherever your business is, capture it and do it later.
More often, so you're right. And I guess I've seen people make a swing too hard away from their default. So if I'm normally or naturally a procrastinator, give me 1 second.
Yep.
Oh, something just happened. There we go. So if I'm naturally or normally a procrastinator and I shift hard
by the way,
now,
Michael just sent instructions to some spaceship up in the some satellite up in orbit that he said he had to change the trajectory.
So here's what happened. Oh, so just because this is okay, maybe yes, fine. Poughkeepsie, you're welcome. So, if you are naturally a procrastinator, if you shift too hard towards do it now, then you're going to have a different kind of anxiety, right? Because you're going to be trying to do a bunch of things when naturally there's the benefit of the procrastination is, well, not the benefit. Let me say that. It's not necessarily a benefit to procrastination. The benefit to delay is the opportunity to think with it, and operate with intention, take a more careful approach. That's not my default, and I go too hard this way. I'm not prepared to operate in a do it now mode out of the gate. On the other hand, if I'm naturally a do it as soon as it comes in person, and I shift straight to ignore every new idea, then I'm definitely going to lose and miss stuff.
Right.
So, and the sharing, if I'm naturally keep giving everything away, and I have somebody I'm working with right now who says this is their default, and that's good, but I know that one of the risks of that is that there's no tracking. And if we're not giving the do it now things to the do it now people, or the come up with a plan things to the come up with a plan people in my sharing it away idea, then there's a huge risk there too. So I think what I want to get to is ultimately, whether you have a capture system or not, what the capture system is designed to enable is intentional approach. An intentional approach instead of a default approach. And so to your question, people, should they try this? Absolutely. If they're not doing much right now and they need to go in this way, great. And check to make sure that it's working. And if you're if you are doing it all now and you start ignoring it, make sure you're not forgetting important things. So keep checking to make sure that whatever approach you're taking is working.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because that's
the thing that leads to the prioritization of stuff, though, right?
And
like that's where the prioritization. Yeah.
And that's what a capture system enables. The capture system enables you to prioritize because. So I'm going to go to there's the get things done or GTD method. One of the principles of that is having what they call a universal inbox, where everything coming in goes into one source, one bucket essentially. And at the end of the day, there's a processing method or a time frame where you take everything in that inbox and then turn it into what it is, if I remember the phrase correctly. Because the things coming in might not, some of them might be actions, some of them might be ideas to file away for later, some of them might just be informational, some of them might be spam, essentially, right? But if all I have is a capture system and no system for processing what's in that system, then I just end up with a bunch of full notebooks. And and when the FBI comes calling and they haul out the boxes of all my ideas, maybe I have to go talk to somebody, in a white jacket. Because if all you're doing is taking every single idea that comes in your head and putting it down on a piece of paper somewhere, you don't ever do anything with it after that, that's also a form of madness.
Right. Yep. So how if you're I guess let's throw some theories out there or scenarios.
Yes.
If I'm a person who there's ideas that constantly come, right? Like I'm looking right now at an idea that got developed a little bit. And from a hygiene standpoint, right? Like an idea hygiene, never came back to it.
Got it.
Feeling bad about that, feeling good about it, long story short is, right, there's different theories to different ways of getting stuff done, right? Like there's, I think what I've identified and probably also what Michael has identified, friends, is that I need a lot of balls in the air in order to move things forward, right? Like that's just kind of how I work. And they all help each other in some way, shape, or form. And there are other people who just need to focus in on that one thing. And both have shown success. Both ways have worked. It's a matter of one, understanding yourself. So let's just say I'm a focused person, what are some things that I can do to begin to pull myself out to let some of those ideas flourish as I capture them or begin to enact them and manage them? What are some ways that I can do that?
That's good. If you want to start, if you want to start to push into the area where you don't have a natural affinity or strength, oftentimes what it comes down to is scheduling structured time to do that. So if you're naturally a do it now person, if you don't have scheduled time to evaluate other ideas, then that just won't happen because you'll keep taking in the very next thing or tackling the immediately next deadline. But so if you don't have a cadence where, and once a week I stop to check and evaluate and plan and pull back and get bigger picture, then you'll just stay in that churn mode and burn yourself quite out and feel really productive the whole time, but maybe not, you'll be very busy, but not always necessarily productive. Flip it the other way. If you're always ignoring, then you need to schedule time to get things done. So a lot of it comes down to that operating with intention idea. And I'm getting a list of like 3 different filters for after the capture system, the decide step. I'm thinking that's what we're going to tackle next week is once you have the ideas in the capture system, now what? And I've got 3 different ways that I think we can give people, again, depending on how you look at the world, let's find a method that helps you process what's in your capture to evaluate with intention what the next best thing is. So I'm intentionally holding that off because that's a whole nother episode. In the meantime, I think to your point, figure out what your natural approach is and start to recognize what the risks are of your current approach and put some tiny effort, tiny on purpose, towards mitigating that risk by introducing one of the other methods. And at the very least, everybody needs a capture system, whatever it is.
Right.
And
so do me a favor, can you put a negative under the capture system? The sure, one negative,
please.
That's a critical thing of the negative of the capture system is you'll get, again, it goes back to that, you'll have a bunch of notebooks with ideas, right, but they're not actively getting done. So it's
well, you're right, because that's the one idea I was gonna introduce, which will also be our T's. All right. So VP of HR once gave me this line, and I've used it ever since. Kill it or feed it, but don't let it starve.
Right.
If you have a great capture system and that's all you have, the risk is too many starving ideas.
Right. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs, business people get stuck, right?
Yes.
Yes. And you and I have talked a lot about this. Everybody has ideas.
Right. Yes.
At the end of the day, it's the people who enact and try and work through them and put in the time to actually take it from brain to paper to action to result. That actually is what makes progress in terms of what matters for what you're doing, right? Like, and I'll give you an idea of like how people take their ideas and do stuff with it. But I remember, oh man, I don't even know if I want to share this story. I had an entrepreneur who I was working with probably about 6 years ago. And she was great person, right? And great energy, a lot of vision, wanted big dreamer, and was great, except for she's like, I've got all these ideas. I just want to share them with everybody. I write them down, I send them off, and I'm okay with just working my 9 to 5 and coming up with ideas and sending them off. And one day I asked her, I was like, that's great. But every time you come, like we begin to try and figure out how to transition you out so that you can do your own thing. Which one of these are you going to pick to work on? She's like, well, I don't know. I just have too many ideas. I write them down. I send them off to friends and people in the network. And then I went, are they doing them? She's like, well, I don't know. I said, okay. Do you have an idea as to how they all fit together? She's like, yep. I said, okay. Have you written how these all piece together at all down? She's like, no. I said, okay. In order to build some sort of deliverable, write down how all of these ideas come together. And then from there, we can begin to piece things together and pick and prioritize. Because what it ended up doing is becoming a book for her. And that book was more of like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a charge, like a call,
manifesto.
Like a manifesto. Thank you. For her, and she was able to share that, and that was a deliverable, and inevitably helped her to shape it because she put in the work to write the book.
Because ultimately it was like
her
vision, and ultimately it sounds like it was vision, mission, values, deliverables, strategies. Like it was all these things, and if for her ability to show and explain to somebody else how it all fit and worked together was therefore her ability to delegate others because they now understood the vision and they were all into that same rallying cry. Is that about right?
Yes, exactly. Yep. And then people began to dive in and actually do the shared things, and it was fine, right? Like it helped to, and it was a sticking point for her. But
sure,
I think that sometimes people have to take a step back and evaluate it before they can start to move forward. And maybe that's writing it all down and tying it all together. But if you're impatient, like
That's
I
absolutely the
am
next step.
sometimes, you have to be willing to do it. Yeah. So
Yeah, the next step is how do I do that? How do I do that step back and get and decide with intention the next thing? Because again, if, as Brad
Yeah.
said, if all we do is capture, each of these has its strengths and weaknesses. If all the benefits of capture are great, but you will stop there if you don't next have the next step, which is what we'll tackle next time.
that's right. So today we learned all about idea management, ideal hygiene, ideal hygiene. And so hopefully you can now take this idea, figure out how you work when it comes to managing and collecting and transferring ideas, with the hope that next time when you come back, we're going to walk through how we're going to prioritize things and figure out how you can explore those 3 effective methods to better process and evaluate the ideas and turn them into productive action for you, either personally, professionally, spiritually, whatever it happens to be, in order to move it forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. In the meantime, send us your questions, your ideas, your complaints, your anecdotes, and your memes to info@sketchyideasshow.com, and a member of our production team will get back to you appropriately. If you want to send us your methods for idea capture, maybe the ideas that you want us to process for you next time, you can do that too. Again, info@sketchyideasshow.com. Come back next week when we run even more sketchy ideas live. And remember, just because it's a sketchy idea doesn't mean it's not worth exploring. See you next time.
Take care.